Hi everyone, welcome to the third session of the LexTech Mate 3.0. I am Jatin and I shall be serving as the moderator today. Today on board with us we have Mr. Raghav Gupta. Hi Raghav.
Hi, Jatin. Thank you for
Hey,
inviting me. It's great to be here.
yes, it's a pleasure to have you here. So I'll be starting with a brief introduction of Mr. Raghav. So Raghav is an industrial engineer with a passion to work on the latest technologies with diverse teams. He has more than 3 years of experience working with blockchain, AI, and IoT-based solutions for industrial automation and finance. Raghav is building with a zeal to revolutionize the very way capitalist system functions today. And he is the founder of EQUIDEI. EQUIDEI is on a mission to revolutionize the finance industry and promote a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive society. They are a team of 7 young professionals with an alignment in vision to leverage the blockchain technology and overcome the shortcomings of the current capitalist economy. They aim to bridge the credit gap for the SME sector and a sector that is constantly evolving, employing more than 50% of the labor force. There is more than 2.5 billion people.
I believe I would like to add on the vision of the equity. So today we work on a very polarized way, where the preference towards banks and NBFCs is very much towards the large enterprises. So today the financial systems works on a concept of risk, and it is very obvious that these small and medium enterprises are very risky to invest in as compared to large enterprises. So, due to this, these small and medium enterprises, which happen to employ 50% of the working labor around the globe, are left out and don't have the same opportunities as the large enterprises. So, this is the gap that we want to divide. And today, we are lucky enough to be witnessing the Web3 and Industry 4.0 revolution, through which we actually have the right technologies and resources in place to be able to do just that.
Mr. Raghav, I would like to ask you about the asset securitization and how it is different from asset tokenization and which one of them would be most favorable and why.
Right. Okay, so I would say that tokenization is a kind of asset securitization. So, asset securitization is a very legacy system which is already being followed by a lot of banks and institutes around the globe. The concept here is that to do any sort of transaction, there has to be a trust between the two parties of the lending as well as the receiving it. So the concept of securitization comes in where the borrowing party is supposed to give something as a collateral to be able to receive the intended services or borrow some money from the lender. So let's say that I want to do a transaction and I have two parties. One is a lender who is providing some service or a loan or to the receiving party, and then I have a borrower who wants to get some service. So ideally, in a transaction, these two parties wouldn't have any reason to trust each other. With a securitization, the borrowing party would come and stake one of his assets as a collateral to be able to borrow the required services. And on the delivery of the services, the asset would be released. Such processes are ideally only followed by large institutions like banks and NBFCs who have the required resources and the legal compliances to be able to follow these systems. Right now, with the power of blockchain, we are entering into an era of asset tokenization, which means doing securitization digitally over a blockchain. What it means is it would enable the securities market to be open to a wider range of retail investors from around the globe. All of them can verify the required resources and the data of the asset over a blockchain, followed by a certain governance model, and then contribute their fractional amounts to be able to invest or provide that service to the intended borrower. So asset tokenization just makes the market much more liquid and opens it up to a wider pool of audience while bringing in the required data over a blockchain, which is immutable and much more secure. Both securitization and tokenization have their own use cases. Securitization is still a preferred mode of medium in highly regulated markets like the capital markets or where assets with a higher quantum of funds are involved, whereas tokenization can make these investments more liquid for big institutions.
All right. So, from what I gather, these are some interesting concepts, and it seems like asset tokenization is something that is going to revolutionize the traditional model of asset securitization that we currently have. It really sounds interesting. So, this brings me to the question as to what is an energy asset tokenization, and how is it going to affect the energy sectors and its consequently involved investments.
Right. So energy is one market which hasn't been able to commoditize yet. Most of the energy that we still use in our industries and our homes are being produced via large corporations on very capital intensive industries like big wind farms, solar farms, and thermal power plants. The retail customer is left out of the opportunity to decide where he's going to receive the energy from and whether he wants a share in production of that energy, which is then going to be used by billions of people around.
Hmm.
Energy tokenization would enable and give and bring this opportunity to a larger pool of investors so that they can invest into these farms while they are being set up. After COVID, there's one positive impact that the world is much more inclined and derives much more energy from renewable energy market. But the problem remains that the renewable energy today doesn't have the required capacity to be able to service the demand of the industries and the domestic users. We need more and more investments to be able to come here so that the investors are able to make a reliable, less risky, and a short term fixed income investment. Tokenization enables us that. It is possible for us users to be able to contribute small amounts, to be able to set up a high capital intensive infrastructure like a big wind farm or a solar farm. So it would bring us all the opportunity to commoditize the energy market, be enablers of and decision makers of what energy are we going to use, and make the market much more open for everyone.
Oh, so it's much like how a regular person can get a say into the big decisions involving energy, which traditionally have been controlled majorly by the big corporations. So we now, as the regular consumers, will now have a say into what energy we choose and how do we invest in it. That really is something quite interesting and something that can be adopted at a very local level. So,
Right. So we
uh,
definitely don't have to be dependent on these large power plants now. We as users can install our own microsystems, which can be a part of a similar network. So today, we already have seen a shift where a lot of industries and residential homes are installing microsystems like small wind turbines or small solar panels on their own to be able to at least produce a part of what energy that they use. So this is the future that if we are able to bring these investment opportunities to a larger pool of public, we all can install these systems and make a faster transition to a more renewable and sustainable environment.
well, that would be something quite revolutionary indeed. So, talking about the SME sector, since your business model heavily relies on the SME sectors and aims to revolutionize the SME sector's credit gap. So, if an SME lacks collaterals, physical assets, intangible goods, etc., and accept a business idea, how tokenization can help an SME to access the finance?
Right. Okay, so that's an amazing question. So we have been talking mostly about the perspectives of tokenization when there's a physical asset involved. But there's a whole different class of assets which is coming up in this 21st century, talking about IP rights, data, and even ideas on a paper. So what tokenization does again here is that it is possible for any SME to submit their idea, which shows some projections of their revenues, their intellectual property, which can be in the form of NFT on a blockchain, or any particular data that they ought to produce while in production. So it is possible for us to monetize all these intangible assets now, which gives us a certain sense of security because they are present on a blockchain, and we can see how are they going to earn any future cash flows moving forward. So again, such markets which were traditionally only being invested by venture capitalists and private investors who had that risk appetite would open up to a large pool of investors who can contribute their small investments to bring these ideas into realities.
All right, so that really opens up the pool of investment opportunities that was earlier restricted to a regular Joe. So I would like to add on to it and talk about how you really placed a lot of relevance as to the intangible factors which have been usually ignored in the normal sense, and how they actually play into a business's major part as per the IP rights are involved or the value of the idea in itself. So I believe this is a
Right.
phenomenal job that has been brought up.
Yeah. So we definitely need to have certain documentation and systems in place. For example, if I would to take a use case, it would be that I have this startup idea. I would ideally required to perform a stringent market analysis to understand what the total addressable market is, what would be my revenue streams, and how would this company generate any cash to be able to grow big.
Hmm.
Similarly, such concepts and documentation can then be put on a blockchain, which can then be governed by certified professionals who can give their votes to this idea and help build trust for the community so as to make it as a certifiable, investable opportunity. And apart
Right,
from it,
right.
it's not the only side. Like we keep talking about the asset and the investment side, but tokenization would enable a lot more for a startup. Talk about its operations. Now it is possible for entities to not go about building their own teams and have formal working teams in one office and one workplace. With the current work from home culture, we actually have seen a DAO culture come up in this community, which is again powered by tokenization. It is possible for a much wider talent pool around the globe to be able to contribute to a project and get paid in token incentives as they believe in the project.
Hmm.
So it's efficient for startups in the form of operations because the hiring is essentially decentralized. More people can come and contribute. Second, the fundraising mechanisms have become much more efficient and global. Third, their intellectual properties and every intangible asset has some attached value to it, which can then be certified and agreed upon by certain governors and voting professionals over a blockchain.
Wow, it really is interesting. So, when we talk about a decentralized autonomous organization in this regard, it really adds the value to the entire perceived value system. And similarly, it brings me a question as to how EQUIDEI, with its interesting ideas and its revolutionizing concept, is going to transform the market as it is right now.
Right. So our main focus is to make SME financing easy and to be able to power these manufacturing companies get same opportunities like large enterprises. So on this line, we have tried to build the entire infrastructure on blockchain, where they can tokenize both their tangible and intangible assets to be able to raise funding from a global pool of investors, invest into their businesses, and share the required data and resources to be able to keep investors interested and follow transparent mechanism of operations. Second, to run our entire infrastructure at a global scale, we are building a DAO where all the governance and the validation of these assets and businesses is going to be done by a global pool of certified professionals. And all of them are going to be incentivized in these very tokens so as to build the trust for the protection of investors as well as the SMEs from both the ends.
Right. So, Raghav, is there any particular means for these professionals who are participants of the DAO that will be certifying a particular opportunity? So, is there any means or any standards to inculcate these professionals in your DAO? So, what is usually the standard that is involved? getting these professionals in your DAO?
Definitely. Yeah, so usually these valuations or verifications are done by certified professionals who have some sort of government or an institutional license to be able to perform such due diligence. For instance, in India, such validations are done by valuation officers who are approved by local municipal authorities to be able to evaluate certain physical assets like real estate, plant and machinery, etc. Second, to evaluate the financial sheets, chartered accountants who are regulated by ICAI in India are
Mhm.
authorized to be able to perform the necessary financial due diligence and put a valuation to a certain company. Then we have valuation analysts and company secretaries who check for the required legal compliances and reduce the further risk of double spending and the track of ownership, etc. So certain professionals with required licensing in different jurisdictions would be very crucial for our system to be able to build that trust of the investors so that the required assets are not double spent or to reduce the instances of fraud or corruption in our platform.
And that really would uh, revolutionize or maybe change the way the current system works, and would the entire DAO system inculcation in valuing a particular commodity would actually help it reach a more fairer value because of how the entire system is decentralized and no particular body has to gain from it. It is the people who are actually involved in the DAO, participating in it, voting in it, who are actually to gain a fair value from doing their job fairly. There is no personal interest or bias here, which is a great system that has been installed.
It definitely would. And I think the major part here would be distributed governance. Even though we have these professionals, it's very crucial to make sure that all of them have the right incentives and fear the system equally so as to make sure that the governance standards of the platform are not compromised. So it is enabled again via blockchain technology, where all of these certified professionals act as different nodes on the platform and they are able to vote, follow a distributed governance, and all the good actors based on the final vote are rewarded with certain tokens or monetary incentives, while it is possible to reduce the rating or even penalize other professionals. So it is
Oh.
a very efficient risk and reward system which helps us to manage and scale these business ideas at a much more faster scale, which was not possible with the traditional technologies which the institutes have been operating on.
That is particularly a great example of how we can harness the blockchain technology into making something which takes a common problem or takes a traditional problem and makes it very convenient for the regular person or a regular consumer investor. So I really love what you're building here, and I nothing but respect for you in that matter. And unless there's something else you would like to add, I think that would be it for this session.
Yeah. I think the core concept of Web3 would be about building a robust community. Each and
Hmm.
every action and each and every service is done in a distributed manner via community. So there is no concept of having a large employer base or having the required resources to be able to grow at a step on step manner. What Web3 enables you to do is that you have an idea, it is totally open source, and people from around the globe who believe in this can come contribute, either in form of
Hmm.
investments, either in form of taking up some job work, either in form of taking some governance and voting rights, or just being your customers even. So it gives much more power in many traditional aspects of how corporations work today. So, yeah, with these ideas, we're building equity and very confident that the entire Web3 and tokenization market is going to do wonders for the entire economy moving forward.
And those are some interesting ideas, and I'm sure Equity will do great. And I would like to thank you for taking out time and having a word with us. And look forward to seeing you and Equity both excel and revolutionize